Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. At the end of life, a deceased's family and friends seek closure for that life. It's been that way since the beginning of human civilization. The process of closure usually includes religious rites, wakes, vigils, as well as mourning and grieving practices. It can include pallbearers, eulogies, and processions. In some cultures, the position of the body or the compass direction of the body is of great importance. Bodies can be buried in the ground or in a vault. More recently, cremation has become a popular alternative in the United States. An undertaker or mortician acts as a funeral director. He embalms the body to preserve it until burial or cremation and performs other tasks for the family. To discuss the specifics of what the funeral director does for the family is today's guest, Curt Schildknecht. He is a third generation to operate Schildknecht Funeral Home. Schildknecht has been a family business in O'Fallon, Illinois for 65 years. Curt Schildknecht, welcome to Conversation.
Thank you for having me, Lee.
So you're a funeral director.
Yes, sir.
That means you have some sort of a license?
Yes, the state of Illinois licensed us.
How does, but you grew up in this.
Yes.
All right. So let's just talk about the process of getting into being a funeral director or coming into the funeral business. How does that happen if you're not born into it?
Well, if a person would like to become a funeral director in the state of Illinois, it's a dual license. You are licensed as a funeral director and an embalmer. A person would go to mortuary college. There are several mortuary colleges that a person could apply to. One would be St. Louis Community College in Forest Park. You could go to Carbondale at SIU Carbondale, or you could go to Galesburg, or you could go up to Chicago, Worsham in Chicago, or many other mortuary colleges. The state of Illinois requires a 2-year degree at minimum. You must pass the national boards for funeral service examining, pass those boards, and then serve a 1-year internship. Once that internship has been completed, you must also complete 24 cases for embalming and funeral directing, turn those all into the State Board of Funeral Service, and have those all completed and signed off by the funeral home that is you're serving your internship with, and you can then be a licensed funeral director and embalmer in the state of Illinois. Mm-hmm. So it would be an entire 3-year process, 2 years of schooling and a year of internship to become a funeral director and embalmer in the state of Illinois.
In general, what do you need to know to take these boards?
Well, there's a lot of science, a lot of things that are taught that are all in school, but it takes a lot more outside that is learned on the job, to tell you the truth.
Like what?
Well, we have mortuary law that is taught in school. You have embalming chemistry that is taught in school, of course. You have your embalming practicum that is taught in school, of course. You have the restorative art. You have the sciences. There are all the law, the mortuary law, many things that are taught all there in the school.
When you say restorative arts, mm-hmm. you're talking about cosmetics, basically, right?
That is some of the things.
In order to improve the look of the deceased at the time of the showing?
That is correct, yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm. And perhaps a little bit of how to dress properly, or dress them properly?
That is right, yeah. Mm-hmm. How to bring them back to their natural splendor and present the body in the the memory picture that the family would want, and how the family would remember them.
And from a personal point, I know, again, you grew up in this business, but from a personal point of view, there are a lot of people that, oh my God, dead bodies. I don't want to touch that. I don't want. How does one get used to, or I don't even know how to put it. How do you get used to dealing with the dead and working with the dead?
They're our loved ones. I know they're the people that we all knew and loved all of our lives. They've lost their life, and there's no greater thing we can do for them but to take care of them. To have them there for the visitation, for the funeral, to have them prepared properly, embalmed, prepared, cosmetized and dressed for the family, to be there and taken care of in the proper ways and manners so they're presented in a loving manner and the proper memory picture for the family. That's what we're there for, and that's what we want to do for the family.
I see. Now, as I understand the process, and now I'm talking business here, usually, I guess there's two things. A young person is killed in a car accident, so all of a sudden the family has to deal with this on the spur of the moment, and they hadn't anticipated this. Then there is the other case of somebody who is my age and older, who is making plans for the future. How does that work when someone comes to you? Let me rephrase that. When somebody comes to you and there has been an accident and it's totally unexpected, how is that different than a pre-arranged funeral?
Well, that family is usually, in a very tragic manner, they're very upset. They don't know what to do. So you many times have to handle them much differently than the person that has died and they're much older. So you have to take baby steps, if you will, with them to walk them through that process. So the person that has lost their family member in a tragic manner, you take their time with them, and you walk them through whatever their wishes are for those funeral services, those memorial services that they wish to have for their loved one. That visitation, that funeral, that memorial service, so you can present that person those memories and honor that person in the manner in which they wish to have.
Do they usually have a predetermined idea of that portion, or is it up to you to lay out, well, here are your options?
We may lay out a lot of options for them because that's something that they may not have thought of at all. This may be a very young person that has passed away in a tragic manner. So that's something they may not have thought of at all. Mm-hmm. So we may lay out a lot of options for them, and everything from the visitations, funerals, different ways we can show things on monitors in the chapel. They may want cremation. They may even be thinking about donation. They may be thinking about
donation of the body.
Donation of the body to science. They may be thinking of cremation and then memorialization of different things. So we may want to lay out many different options for them.
Mm-hmm. Now, at a moment like that, when there's been no mental preparation, news accounts have said over a number of years that there are predatory groups that'll come in, and boy, they'll just sink their claws right in and try and just take as much money from people as they possibly can. What is it that folks can do to avoid that?
What kind of groups may those be?
I have heard over the years there have been claims in the newspapers not necessarily in this area, but in other parts of the country where there have been, you go in and the next thing you know, you're buying, a very expensive casket. Everything seems to be much more expensive than it would have been had you been thinking clearly.
Well, I'm sure there are groups like that out there. We are very blessed to have in this area many very ethical funeral directors, cremation groups here in our area, and I can say that as a former president of the St. Clair County Funeral Directors, that we're blessed to have a very good, solid group of funeral homes and funeral directors here in our area, and I think I can speak very highly of them. I don't know of any that have that kind of ethics in this area, but I'm sure there are those out there.
There's always shysters in this world. People
Indeed,
who,
and we see some of those in the news, and I just hope we don't have any of them here in our direct.
So what is it people should look out for? How do they know when they're not being overcharged at a moment of emotional vulnerability? Well,
it's always good for the family to not come in alone. They need to bring in their family with them, so they're not they're thinking as a family, as a group. They can think about what they're doing. It's even better if they can think ahead of time. If they know that this death is going to be occurring. When it's a tragic situation, they don't have that opportunity. But if they can think as a family, they have multiple individuals there, so they can think about the issues and think about what's going on, and they know what's happening. So it's not just one person making all the decisions.
And there is a wide variety of costs, aren't there?
Sure there are. And there's a wide variety of options. And that's why we try to lay all those options out there for the family. Try to give them the options of burial. They may have the option of cremation or donation. Cremation, memorialization, instead of a full funeral service. Maybe they want to go to their local church. They can have the services at the funeral home. An evening of visitation beforehand. There's many different options that we can do. We have caskets or rental caskets, cremation caskets.
Wait, pause there for just a second, because I did a little bit of, no more than a little bit, of reading in preparation for this discussion, and one of the things that I read about was cremation, and what you just said about rental caskets so that the casket is not being burned as well. This is just a nice, well, describe that. It's a nice casket that is for the service?
That is correct, yes. The rental caskets are used in cremation options, and those rental caskets, the insert or the inside of the casket, the body is placed inside there. It is used for the ceremonies, and it's ceremonial. The body and the insert or inside of the casket, then the body and insert comes out, and the interior is then replaced with another insert, and the body of the casket, the shell of the casket, is reused, and that interior is replaced, and you're able to reuse that shell, and a new interior is put back in there again. So that casket then can be rented again for another family, and saving the cost of that casket, and saving a huge cost for the family.
During the first generation of your company, I'll bet that cremation was very, very, very unusual, if used at all.
Oh, 1, 2, 3%. In the beginnings, I'm sure, for my grandfather. My grandfather started our business in 1949 in O'Fallon, and now we're here in our 65th year of business. And cremation now is approaching, high 40%.
So almost half.
Thereabouts. There's some staggering numbers that say that in Illinois, cremation could approach 50% in late 2015.
What do you think accounts for this difference in behavior or philosophy?
On all of the coasts, West Coast, Florida, East Coast, cremation has been on the rise for decades. And it has been encroaching upon the Midwest for years. As it has come to the Midwest, it's been a number of things. I think it's been cost, it's been some changes in some of our social morals. I think the people have changed their values on what they've thought about burial, what they've wanted to spend. So it has increased the cremation. So we're looking at more and more cremation every day.
Do you prepare the body the same for cremation as you would for interment?
Many times the families are looking at still a traditional service. They're still looking at visitation, funeral, and then cremation. So we're still preparing the bodies with embalming, dressing, casketing, using a rental casket or a cremation casket, and having those services. But instead of burial and having to buy a vault or a burial type casket, we're utilizing a cremation casket or a rental casket and then having cremation. So the preparation of the body in many cases is still the same. Mm-hmm. So those services are still all the same and the preparation of the body is still the same.
In the St. Louis metro area, do all of the funeral homes now have cremation on site?
No. There's only so many crematories. Many of the funeral homes utilize a crematory and subcontract, if you will, a cremation service to handle the cremation for them.
I see. So that now your company has its own crematory.
We do. We have a crematory on site, and there are funeral homes that utilize our service.
Uh-huh. And the family knows that the body is being moved from one place to another for that process?
That's correct.
And then the remains come back?
That's correct.
I was asked by somebody, and so this may or may not sound weird, but there are, like gold fillings, perhaps they've had, metal joints inserted into the body. What's left of all that?
All of those, in many times there's hips or shoulders or a screw or plate that may have been in a broken arm or wrist or something. All of those metal pieces that may be in those broken arms or whatever are all disposed of as part of the cremation process. I mean, they're not able to be used. And that's in the cremation authorization that is signed off on by the families when they sign the cremation authorization. And they're all disposed of. That's all non-usable metal anymore. Mm-hmm. Due to the high temperatures, that's all disposed of.
Yeah, I understand that the temperatures have to be enormously high in these crematories, that human bodies are pretty tough to reduce to ash.
Our beginning temperatures are 1,450 degrees, and operating temperatures operate between there and about 1,800.
Mm-hmm. And the process takes approximately how long?
Depending on the size of the body and body types, about 2.5 hours. Mm-hmm.
So it's not
2.5 to 4 hours.
It's not a short process then.
No.
And you do individual bodies? It's not like you put several in?
All individual bodies, that's mandated, that's by law. Law, moral, and ethics, mm-hmm. Always.
And so, is there some method that well, I guess you're saying that whatever goes into the urn at that point, that's the loved one?
That is all of them. That's correct.
Okay.
And we have 4 certified cremators on staff at our firm.
Now, do people usually take the urn with them, or is it buried, or what happens after cremation?
Well, Many of the families do bury the cremains yet on a family plot in a local cemetery. Some take the urns back home and have them on a mantle or a sacred place back home. And some do even scatter the cremains in a scattering garden or a place that they may want to scatter them. And there are some laws that govern where they can and cannot be scattered, but they do scatter them also.
What kind of laws are those? Like
they can't be
burial
scattered.
at sea. You know, that used to be traditional for like Navy guys, right? Is that still acceptable?
No, they can't be scattered in some public waters. Can't be scattered in public grounds and parks and certain places, but there's places they can and cannot be scattered. So.
Mm-hmm. Now, do funeral homes have a relationship with cemeteries, or is this something that the family makes the decision of, you know, where the body is going to go?
Some funeral homes do have a relationship with cemeteries. Most funeral homes do not. Some funeral homes are owned jointly with cemeteries, but most of the funeral homes are private.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that this is kind of a difficult subject. You know, it's like for this American, anyways, I'm just not used to dealing with death. But what other things should people know about, and should they be looking towards perhaps planning in advance for themselves?
You know, Lee, it doesn't have to be a difficult subject. The death rate's 100%. We're all going to die. We all got to think about this sooner or later. Our parents, our loved ones, a spouse. We're going to have to plan a funeral for somebody in our future. And we need to think about that today or tomorrow. Sitting down and making prearrangements is no more than an hour or two and a cup of coffee with your local funeral director. You sit down at his desk, or you can sit down at your kitchen table, a book or his laptop computer, and you can make those prearrangements. Collect all the person's vital statistics, some obituary information, most of which is in your head, and you get all that information. He keeps it in his file cabinet or his computer system, and all those decisions are all there at the funeral home. And when something happens on some weekend, some night, some holiday, and that tragedy or that death occurs, you make one phone call back to the funeral home. And when the whole family is distraught, the funeral home already knows what to do. They know who to call, they got the phone numbers, they know what caskets, they know where to go, they know the clothes, they know what cemetery, they know what minister, they know what church, they know all those things, and it's all done. It's
so
real
you take care of all that at a moment when the family is emotionally distressed and perhaps incapacitated.
Exactly. And you know, all those decisions are all made. And it's as simple as doing, you know, that can be done years in advance.
You said you make house calls too?
Sure.
You go to people's homes.
Yeah, we can go to the house and sit down and take care of that around the kitchen table. It's just that simple.
Now, when someone dies, do they automatically go to the coroner?
No, if the death occurs at home, the coroner's office is notified usually, many times by a phone call. If hospice is involved, hospice nurse can just call the coroner's office and notify them. that this death has occurred, and it's they're called by phone, and the coroner's office doesn't have to come out. If the coroner's office does have to come out, but they'll come out and take care of things. But they don't have to go to the coroner's office.
Mm-hmm.
The funeral home can come out and take care of picking up your loved one and bring them on back to the funeral home.
Mm-hmm. We just have a couple of minutes left here. When is an autopsy required?
Well, that decision is made by the coroner's office. It depends on several factors that the coroner's office would have to decide. It may be in the case of a violent death, a tragic death that may involve homicide, a undetermined death where they don't know the cause, or maybe one where a medical involvement is not present. The person died outside of medical care, and the coroner's office needs to determine what that cause may be.
Car accident?
Could be a car accident. They don't know the cause exactly. Could be homicide. Could be suicide. Could be even a drug overdose where they need to determine the exact cause.
Mm-hmm. And and then after the coroner has finished his process, then the funeral director is called.
They would release the body and the remains to the funeral home, and the funeral home can then pick up the remains and release them to us.
Mm-hmm. And after an autopsy, that's the part that the family sees. They can't really tell that there's been an autopsy.
It should have no physical effect upon what the family would see, and the funeral home and the embalmer would be able to take care of all restoration.
Here in this last minute or two, is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to say to people who are watching this?
Well, I really want to thank you for having me here on the show, and I really want to encourage everybody to talk to their local funeral home and their funeral directors about getting out and making some prearrangements and sitting down with their loved ones and making some of those decisions ahead of time. Because to make those decisions now is the time, not when the death is imminent or when the death has already occurred.
Decisions like cremation versus in-ground or vault burial.
That's correct. Yeah, not when it's too late.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say I suspect you're right, but I know that you're right. And a lot of people put stuff like that off, don't they?
They sure do. They do it till it's too late. And now's the time to do it.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Lee.
Appreciate it. I've been speaking with Curt Schildknecht of the Schildknecht Funeral Home in O'Fallon, Illinois. We've been talking about the subject of what happens after you die. And this man has made it very, very clear. Thank you so much for being with us today. We're going to put this up on YouTube if you want to show your friends. We'll see you next time.